Thanks, City then.
Commissioner Hardy.
Well, so I believe that the question was about compromise. And the first thing that I'll say is that there's good compromise and that there's bad compromise. And as a history and civics teacher, I can tell you a little bit about both. A great compromise was a compromise that brought California into the Union as a free state. Right, that was a fantastic compromise. People had to work together and give up a little bit of something on each side to get that done. A bad compromise was the sort of compromise that created redlining in order to get the New Deal passed because Roosevelt needed the help of Southern racist Democrats to get that through. That's a terrible compromise. And the result of that compromise was 70 years of racial discrimination and 70 years of housing segregation and 70 years of lack of credit on the part of African Americans and who were living in certain parts of the city that they were drawn into literally by law. And so while I recognize that sometimes you have to compromise to get things done, some compromises aren't worth making. And what I believe and what I understand is, as a politician, I was elected, yes, to listen to people. I was elected, yes, to use my judgment, but I was also elected, God forbid, to use my conscience. And when my conscience conflicts with the consciences of other people, I don't see that necessarily as the end of the world. I recognize that those of us who sit on that dais are empowered to vote our consciences. And then hopefully the idea is that after we vote, we can move on and be professionals. And so look, I understand that there have been some contentious votes. There have been some 3-2 votes. There were 3-2 votes before Herman Robinson and I got on the commission. There'll be 3-2 votes after Herman Robinson and I are gone. 3-2 votes will not become extinct because you replace 2 commissioners on the dais. But there were also some 5-0 votes. This commission approved the city's first luxury apartment complex in the history of the city, and it was 5-0. This commission approved 57 single-family homes built new east of I-95, and it was 5-0. This commission approved the bed and breakfast on North O Street, and it was 5-0. And so people who want to pretend that this commission is somehow dysfunctional, people who want to pretend that this commission is somehow unable to get its jobs done, basically haven't been looking at the facts, because the last time I checked, crime is down. Your property values are up. The road bond is under budget and ahead of schedule, and the things that actually make a difference to the lives of people have been getting better and better every single day. And I want to apologize for that.
Can I have the question again, please?
Yes. We have seen some commission meetings be more divisive recently. Instead of unanimous votes and compromise, we are seeing more 3-2 splits. Do you think that consensus and compromise is a good thing or not? Also, how and will you compromise when your best judgment differs from an overwhelming public opinion?
I believe that the commissioners on this dais and all of the electeds are there to represent the public. That does not, it's not an easy task. It means you actually have to be out there in there working with the people to understand what it is that they're looking for. It means you need to understand, you need to be at the community meetings, you need to be volunteering as I have been doing. As far as the divisiveness, it has been very disturbing on our dais. We have seen party politics come to the table, and in that instance, it's not accomplishing anything for Lake Worth. We need to focus on what we can actually do on the dais, and if we come together and we're focusing on a real Lake Worth problem, then the party politics shouldn't even come into play on that. Will I compromise? Of course I'll compromise. Will I compromise my values? No, I would never do that. But I do believe that we need to represent the people's voice. I believe that we do need to compromise, and I do believe that we have seen a lot of dysfunction lately, and I'm hoping that we can change that.
Okay, thank you. The next question will start with Tom Copeland. The City Commission is in the process of establishing a transfer of development rights program. Can you explain how it works? How will it be used in areas along Dixie Highway and around the city's current and future train stations?
Sure, so this is a program that was developed, as I understand it, by William Waters, who's head of our community sustainability and building departments for here in the city. And the idea here is that the city owns a lot of land. And that land can be, we have rights, we have rights to build up that we can actually sell and transfer to developers to help them build a little bit higher than what they normally could. That's allowed in our code. So you know, when this program came up, it seems like a good program to me. I've seen it come up a few times. I believe that it's passed. I'm not entirely sure if it's passed. I think it's maybe coming back up again for a final vote. But it seems like it's a good program to me. I mean, as far as building on Federal and Dixie, we've got to give builders what they want. If you want to develop Federal and Dixie, you know, we heard earlier Mr. Garcia when he says, you know, we got to clean up Federal and Dixie. He's right, but how? So the way that you clean it up is that you bring people in. And if you want to bring people into Federal and Dixie, you have to give people what they want. You have to give developers what they want. And they want to be able to build up, guys. They want to be able to build up. I am absolutely in support of keeping our height restrictions in our downtown corridor. I think that's an important thing to keep our town funky and quirky and keep our downtown how it is. But we've got to be able to grow up here and look at, you know, Federal and Dixie as an opportunity to build a little bit higher. So I'm an advocate for that. If that conversation ever comes up, I look forward to bringing that conversation up as the commissioner. And I think the transfer of development rights is a good program. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, how can it not be a good program? It works if you can do that. As far as heights go, how do you clean up Dixie and Federal Highway? With police presence is how you do that. You know, when the tie line went down last April, you recall Captain Bear told us in a Parrot Cove meeting that we did not have one crime in the city that night. Why? Because we pulled in assets from all the other districts in PBSO and we flooded the streets with officers. Not one crime in the city that night. That's remarkable. That's just absolutely remarkable. So that's how you clean that up. That's what then brings in developers. Commissioner Hardy talks all the time about simplifying our code for developers when they come in, and he's absolutely correct. You have to go through weaving and wobbing to find out how you can do this to get that and then get the other thing. And that's the murky part for developers to get them to come in. I don't think we should be building stuff to the sky, especially along Federal Highway in the south end of town. I think that that's just not the way to do that. But the transfer of rights, I think, is just a great program, and it should be pursued.
Commissioner Hardy.
Before my time begins, may I just be reminded of the question?
The City Commission is in the process of establishing a transfer of development rights program. Can you explain how it works? How will it be used in areas along Dixie Highway and around the city's current and future train stations?
So transfer of development rights programs are not typically run the way that ours is designed to run. Transfer of development rights programs give people who own property, let's say, take the ag reserve way out west, right? We have people who own some farmland, and we want that to remain farmland. But these people who own this property, they also want to develop their property. So we have to find a way to allow these people to cash in. Okay, so what do? You say, okay, all of the homes that you could have built here, we'll allow you to monetize that by selling the density that you could have put on here, by selling the height that you could have put on here, by selling the value of the square footage to someone else in another part of the county or the city. Okay, that we're okay with having that density and that height and that development. All right, our problem is not built that. Our transfer development rights program is not built that way. Basically, the city is saying, well, imagine if, for example, at City Hall, we had developed a 5-story apartment complex. Well, we're not. So we're going to allow ourselves to sell that square footage that we're not choosing to develop to someone else in another part of the city. The problem is we're the only people who are allowed to sell our development rights. Every private property owner in the city will be excluded from this program. That to me is wrong. There's no transfer of development rights program in the state of Florida, as a matter of fact in the entire country, that is run that way. And in addition to that, the main problem that I have with the transfer of development rights program is that it complicates what should be a simple process. This is designed to increase the development potential of certain properties in the city. That's fine. There's a simpler way to do that. It's called upzoning the property. If you want to allow someone to build a taller building, you raise the height limit from 3 stories to 4 stories, or from 4 stories to 5 stories. If you want someone to be able to build more density on a piece of property, you increase the density from 20 units an acre to 30 units an acre, or from 30 units an acre to 40 units an acre. Instead, we have constructed a Rube Goldberg machine, an extremely complex mechanism by which a person can increase their development rights by giving the city money. This is pay to play, and it's not okay. It increases the uncertainty that developers have when they buy a piece of property, and it complicates the process, and the loser is the public, because the public is not really aware of how these things work.
So I was on the Planning and Zoning Board when this first came up before the board as a suggestion. And of course I had some questions and concerns about it. So again, what it is that specifically what we're looking at is looking at taking our historic government buildings and selling the rights to develop, if it's a 1-story, selling the rights to a developer to increase their height. I don't disagree with Amari that we should just increase the height to start with. If we're going to allow a 3-story building on XYZ Street, then allow an XYZ Street to have a 3-story building and not make them have to pay for it. But some of my concerns with this was that what happens 20 years from now? What happens 20 years from now if something happens to our, let's say our historic city hall, and we've sold off the development rights, and we realize that the old city hall, we really want to make it into something else, and we want it to be 5 stories, because 20 years from now, that would be the best use for it. Well, you know, what would we do then? We've already sold the development rights. What was explained to me was that at some point in time, zoning can always change. And zoning could change for making that, the ability to make that a 5 star. I'm sorry, public speaking is not my superpower. I'm doing my best here. Thank you. But anyway, so my concern was what happens 20 years from now? How can we predict the future? How do we know what exactly we're going to want from now? Maybe we will want a 5-story building. We can change it with zoning. I don't disagree with Amore. If we will allow a 5-story building, let's allow everyone to have a 5-story building. KISS, keep it simple, sweetheart. Thank you.
Commissioner Robinson.
Well, I certainly reject the idea that we want to give the developers anything they want, which was just said. I don't look forward to canyons coming into our city, which one of my opponents suggested, that 10th Avenue be built up to any height, 6th Avenue be built up to any height, South Federal Highway be built up to any height. I think the TDRs are a good thing to start with. I like the idea of easing into it with city property and not jumping off onto private property, and let's see how it works. It's not a new program. I credit William Waters for bringing it forward to Lake Worth, but at my suggestion, if we're going to do any TDRs, the new developer cannot be a nonprofit that does not pay either taxes or payment in lieu of taxes, which is very critical to Lake Worth. We have too much non-producing tax property, and that was my suggestion that didn't come forward until the last reading of it. So thoughtful and cautious and steady progress is what I'm interested in, and I look forward to the success of this program.
Thank you. The next question will go to Richard Durcio. This is one that came in via our Lake Worth Debate 2019 email. By campaigning side by side and making appearances at various candidate events, you have got to know your opponent or opponents well. What is the kindest thing that you can say about them?
Well, that they all love and care about the city, I think is the kindest thing I could say. And I can extend that to Herman. There's no one that's done more for the city. It'd be hard-pressed to find someone that's done more for this city than Herman Robinson. He's left us his legacy. You know, he's created things that will last long after all of us are gone, and which made it that much more difficult to run, you know, against him. But that's all I have to say about that.
First off, I agree with Richard when he says that Commissioner Robinson has left a legacy for people who will be living here in this city for a very long time to come. And he began leaving that legacy long before he ever ran for office, and he continued to leave that legacy after he gained office, and I expect him to continue giving that legacy for the next 3 years. What I will say about my opponent is that I do believe that she genuinely cares for and loves this city, and that she cares for and loves the people who live in it, and that's a good thing. I think if you look at the history of elections here in the city, typically you have a very, very sane and reasonable person running against people who might not be so sane and might not be so reasonable. That's been the history of the city, and you know what I can say is you can tell that the city has gotten better because of the quality of the candidates who are running for office have improved dramatically over the past couple years. And so every single person up here has a vision for the city. Every single person up here has care and concern for the city, and every single person up here is generally quite reasonable and obviously quite sane. And I think that that's a good thing for the voters. It's a good thing for the city. It's an indicator of the success that we've had. Commissioner Robinson has said we made the job look easy. And therefore, people want to come out and run for this job. And you know what? That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Jim.
Water for a long time.
Go ahead.
So some of you know that I actually worked on Amari's last campaign. I was a song supporter. I knocked on many of your doors. I too believe that he's a very smart man. I believe, obviously, he's a tremendous speaker. His students are very privileged. I appreciate that. As far as the others, they're not really my opponents. I enjoy working with all of them. I've enjoyed the campaign with all of them, and I know that they do love Lake Worth. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
Well, I want to credit them. Running for office is a different lifestyle, and I want to give them and their families credit for stepping up. Richard dresses well, and Tom is a good salesman. And they're going to be my neighbors when we're finished with this election. I look forward to that.
What a great question. I love it, and I'm glad that I get to go last on it. And I want to jump right into it. Richard is a neighbor of mine. Richard's been a friend for a number of years. We've worked on raft races together. We sat on the finance advisory board together. We did some great work on the finance advisory board together. He's a very, very, very intelligent man, and his heart is absolutely in the right place. Herman Robinson, one of the stories that I like to tell is that before I decided to run, I sat down with Herman, and I had the pleasure of doing that, and he was just incredibly welcoming and just a wonderful man. And what he's done for this city over these since 2002, when he first moved into the city, what he's done here is absolutely going to leave a lasting legacy. And he's just an incredibly generous man with his time. He's always out there, cleaning up the neighborhoods, and great guy. So I really like this question. I'm glad that I got a chance to answer it. Thank you.
We're going to start back with Commissioner Hardy with this question. Historically, Lake Worth was known as a middle-class residential community with a full-service, quaint downtown area, a commercial strip along Dixie Highway, and an attractive tourist area in our beach and casino. How would you characterize the Lake Worth of today, and what do you see for its future? What are your plans to get us there?
Wow. I see Lake Worth as the city on the cusp of some very real and tangible successes. First of all, it can no longer be said that our city is just riddled with crime. If you look at the numbers, while we might not be Palm Beach Gardens, okay, we are not the city that we were in the past. And we have gotten a handle on a lot of the issues that have plagued the city for a long time. I look forward to continuing to improve that. But here's what I understand. We're a city of neighborhoods. We have many, many different neighborhoods throughout the city, and in most of these neighborhoods you live within walking distance of something that you need. That's a positive thing. Most of these neighborhoods you live within walking distance of the downtown. That's a positive thing. In most of these neighborhoods, you have diversity. You have cultural diversity, you have religious diversity, you have diversity as far as people living together of different incomes. And I think that that's a positive thing. And what I would like to do, I would like to take advantage of the fact that Lake Worth is the last walkable coastal town in Palm Beach County. And I would like to give more people the opportunity to enjoy what it is that we have. And that means, frankly, we talk about what kind of city we see in the future. I would like to see more residential development occur around the downtown and along the Dixie Highway corridor and along South Federal Highway and along Lake and Lucerne west of Dixie Highway and also west of I-95 where I live. I think that is critical to us becoming the city of our potential. These business owners cannot survive on people coming from other cities here. It's a very, very competitive environment. Our downtowns, you have to compete with Delray. We have to compete with West Palm Beach. We have to compete with Boynton Beach down there on Dixie Highway and Federal. So we have to allow more people to live in our city, and we can only do that if we allow residential units to be built. And that goes back to the conversation that we had about the Transfer Development Rights Program. We need to drastically simplify our code. We have to allow people to build stuff here, and if they feel that there's something uncertain about the process that we allow development, by which we allow development to occur, then they're not going to come here. The deals aren't going to come here. The developers are not going to turn vacant lots into units, and that's desperately what we need.
Sorry, can you give me the question one more time?
Sure. Historically, Lake Worth was known as a middle-class residential community with a full-service, quaint downtown area, a commercial strip along Dixie Highway, and an attractive tourist area in our beach and casino. How would you characterize the Lake Worth of today, and what do you see for its future? What are your plans to get us there?
All right, so as many of you know, I actually moved from Boca Raton a few years ago. I was looking for my forever home. The kids were off to college. I was looking to downsize. I looked in North Carolina, I looked in Georgia. I was considering going back to my home, which is California. I looked on both coasts of Florida. And it came down to a few things. I wanted to remain in Palm Beach County. I wanted to be near the beach. I needed 3 bedrooms, hoping that the kids would come home. I wasn't ready for a condo because I had 2 big dogs. And for me, it came down to, what happened is I was watching Little House Nation, and they did the episode on the cottages. And I had remembered Lake Worth. I used to come down and see the consignment shop, so I would immediately started looking, and I looked at about 40 homes. I also wanted to be on the west side. I didn't want hurricane insurance. I didn't want to worry about being evacuated. And so I started looking, like I said, about 40 homes. A lot of them were rental properties. I found my forever home in Tropical Ridge. We are a city of neighborhoods, and each one is very different. I believe that we need to encourage those differences, and I think there's actually some plans to do that. So I look forward to that. As far as Dixie Highway, I think we really need to take advantage of our CRA. We have the CRA, it has Dixie Highway, they have Lake and Lucerne, and we need to take advantage, kind of move away from the affordable housing approach and move into helping our businesses and helping these corridors. This is what people see when they come in. We've got some issues going on with 10th Avenue A and B and an empty lot over there. That's people come in off of 10th Avenue and they see this empty lot, and then they look over and they see the homes. And I don't blame the homeowners. The homeowners have been messed with between a Wawa and a Dollar General and everything else. They're not putting any love into these homes. But we need to start looking at using our CRA proactively to help our businesses, to help our corridors, and to clean our streets. Thank you.
Mr. Robbins.
So, Lake Worth is Lake Worth, and it's going to be Lake Worth in 20 years or 50 years. We're still going to be Lake Worth strong in terms of its people, its neighborhoods, its community. South Federal Highway is going to eventually develop those empty lots to the greater good of everybody. The change that's coming is we're behind the growth, but we're not behind the love of Lake Worth. I mean, let them build. All we want to do is increase our tax base so that we can continue to make the quality of life in Lake Worth what we want it to be. I really don't like the word change because we're going to grow and things are going to be built, but Lake Worth is still going to be Lake Worth, and I look forward to the next 50 years Lake Worth.
Well, Lisa, I think you said that we used to be middle class, but if I'm not middle class, I don't know what is. So that's my first thought. As far as what I see as what I see for Lake Worth, so I see Lake Worth as a city that has gotten over some really, really dark years. We've gotten past 2008, 2010, but we've also had some incredible decades prior to that as well. I see a city that has addressed a lot of the issues that came from those years about 10 years ago, and I've seen us progress over that time. It's not just PBSO getting to where it is an operation that took time to get there. We've seen some incredible stuff happen. We've seen the rate parity come down for our residents. We've seen the city get cleaned up. We've seen our code finally get in place, and we've seen our comprehensive plan done. We've seen a lot of good stuff in the city, but I think that's the culmination of many years. Right now, we're coming up on 2020. If you look to the south of you, Boynton Beach has a $160 million public-private partnership going on right now. They're sinking $70 million of public funds to rebuild an entire city center right in their downtown that's going to attract the next generation of homeowners and businesses and people who are going to come into that city and love that city just like all of them, just like the rest of the residents there. I look to the north and I look at West Palm Beach and I see that West Palm Beach has $2 billion under development right now. And I can't help but just sit and wonder myself, where are we at and what are we doing with this? I'd say that my vision for this city is making some really big decisions about what we need to do as a city to help us get over all of the problems that we all talk about that we have. A lot of that is on my card. I'm happy to go into more detail. I'm down to 15 seconds. But I see us making big decisions and setting ourselves up for the future and making sure that we're an attractive city for the next generation of Lake Worthians to come in and love this town just as much as we do. Thanks.
Richard Garcia.
You know, what attracted me in 1995 was the downtown. There are no downtowns in South Florida. Delray Beach at the time, Atlantic Avenue wasn't the Atlantic Avenue that it is today. You know, it was just these two towns that had a downtown. It reminded me of Richfield Park, where I grew up in New Jersey. It was 3 blocks of downtown and all the stores were there. I disagree with the premise that we need to make it sustainable just from within Lake Worth. You know, here we are, we're on the beach. We're on Palm Beach Island right now. And we can draw from all of this. If we clean up our downtown and we clean up our streets, that people aren't afraid to come. You know, the Four Seasons would stop sending people here if they wanted to come for dinner. They'd say, no, you don't want to go to Lake Worth, it's a little too dangerous. And we have the Old Palm Beach sending guests in the middle of the night to Dixie Highway to find hookers. And we've picked up John's doing that. That's the sort of thing that we need to do to get ourselves a little more sustainable. We need to just clean that sort of thing up, clean up our image, make ourselves a little more marketable in that sense. So when you talk about downtown, look west of Dixie. You don't see an empty storefront west of Dixie on Lake and Lucerne, do you? They're full. They're full because they're feeding the people that are there with the services and the goods that they need. We don't have that going on here. We have a few too many empty storefronts, 13 of them right now, on Lake Avenue alone between Dixie and Federal Highway. How do we solve that problem? So I don't think it's a parking problem as some people might think. I see the vision for the city as being flourishing as it should and flourishing as it has. And I think drawing people from both sides, from the west and of course from the island, from the east. And I think that's what's going to be our sustainability. We have to be attractive to the people that are around us. And this is a world-class location. You've heard me say it. We need to make ourselves in that ilk. And again, it goes back to taking care of our infrastructure and our assets. And we need to put our efforts toward that.
This question will start with Kathy Church. We are the Lake Worth Business Committee within the Lantana Chamber of Commerce. In a way, we are representatives of the central Palm Beach County area. Please discuss what the concept of regionalism means to you, and can we use it to attract business and investment?
Well, I'm going to be honest, I'm not familiar with that term.